everyone. Welcome to Live Through Jesus Weekly Devotions. On this episode, God may restrain his power, but it's not lacking. This was inspired by 1 Samuel 5-7. So I want to tell you a funny story about my son when he was in kindergarten or first grade. He had an aide that was a senior boy in his PE class. So this is like a 17, 18-year-old boy that helped with the little kids in PE. And this boy was also in the youth group at our church, and my dad was the youth director. And so my dad said that this kid came into youth one night and he said, I may have to beat your grandson at tetherball pretty soon if he doesn't quit bragging to all his friends that he can beat me. And so I was talking to my son about this when I read this lesson, and I asked him about it, and he said, oh yeah, I remember playing this boy in tetherball every day. And every day he let me beat him, and I actually did think I was better than him. And I was telling all my friends that I could beat him. So he's like, yes, all of that is true. And then my son told me a part of the story that I didn't know. And he said one day, apparently he got sick of this, and he just hit the ball really hard. And the ball hit me right in the face. And mind you, my son is like 5 or 6 years old, right? And so even the teachers were like, what were you doing? Why would you hit it so hard? And you hit him right in the face, And so my son, when he's telling me this story, he says, yeah, Mom, he told the teachers he didn't mean to. And obviously he did not mean to hurt me, and he felt really bad. But he did mean to hit that ball that hard. He's like, now that's evident to me. He's like, he was trying to show me that he did have the power to hit the ball hard if he chose to. That was his purpose. And obviously my son is right. This boy had been letting him win all of this time, because if an 18-year-old 6-foot boy hits the ball as hard as he can, it's just going to wrap around the pole over my son's head before he can even touch it, right? And so there would be no game. And so obviously that's what he was doing. But apparently he was getting a little sick of my son bragging about this every day. And so he did just kind of want to show him, I have the power to hit this ball. I just haven't been. That was what was going on. And that reminded me of God, because God has the power, whether we see it or not, right? My son really believed that he was stronger and better than this man, basically. But he wasn't. He was just withholding his power. He was just not revealing the power that he had to my son. And so my son thought he didn't have it, but he obviously had it. And that's how God is. God always has the power. We just may not see it because he may restrain it for some purpose. And in the lesson that I read this week, that's what happened. God let the Philistines beat his people, the Israelites, because he was trying to teach the Israelites a lesson. He wanted the Israelites to turn to him. They weren't obeying him. The priests weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so God wanted the Israelites to learn a lesson. And so he withheld his power so that the Philistines could beat them. But it wasn't because he didn't have the power to beat the Philistines. It's because he was withholding it. It was all for the purpose of teaching the Israelites a lesson. And then later, when they actually do learn the lesson, then they're more victorious than they ever would have been if God wouldn't have let them lose in the first place, because losing taught them something. It made them turn to God whenever their priest died and the Philistines took their ark, and they're like, oh no, we need to turn to God. And so God was using that to teach them something, but it wasn't because he didn't have power. And so in a game with our children, it may be necessary, especially if they're really young, to let them win. But in the game of life, we all know that it's not always beneficial to let people win. Sometimes we have to lose to learn the lesson, and God knows that. And so sometimes God may be trying to teach us something, and so what we think is a loss is not really a loss, and God knows what he's doing all along. God isn't any less powerful today than he was whenever he created the heavens and the earth, right? He created the heavens and the earth with just his words. Hebrews 11:3 says, by faith we understand that the world was framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things that are visible. God created everything out of thin air with just his words. If he had the power to do that then he still got the same power today. He still has the same power to fight for us today, just like he had for the Israelites. He can bring victory to us. Romans 8:31 says, if God is for us, then who can be against us? And then down in verse 37, it says, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loves us. So he still has the power to fight for us. If God's on our side, no one can be against us. He still has the power to perform miracles for us. Ephesians 3:20 says that he is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or even imagine. We can't even think up the things that he's capable of doing for us. And so God has the power. So if you're ever wondering, why is God not showing himself? Like, why is it that he's not doing something for me right now? Why is he not revealing his power to me? Instead of doubting that he has that power, because we understand that people can have power and just restrain it, then ask yourself, why would God be restraining his power right now? Because he has a reason. If he's doing it, if he's not revealing his power, if he's not bringing you this victory or whatever, there's a reason. And so if your victory looks more like a defeat, or if God is being silent right now in your struggle, then ask yourself, is God trying to teach me something? If he wants you to learn something, then he's not going to hide it from you, right? If you're seeking to know what he's trying to teach you, he will guide you. He will show you what it is that he is wanting you to know. And so maybe he's trying to teach you something. Maybe your idea of victory is not God's idea of victory. Maybe you are thinking about this all wrong. And so maybe you need God to help you see it his way. Sometimes, if you'll just ask him, he'll immediately tell you how you're thinking about this wrong. And then other times you're going to be asking him and you're going to feel like you don't get an answer. And you're going to wonder, why is God doing this? What is happening? But then eventually you all of a sudden realize, oh, I don't feel about that the way I used to. God has changed your heart. So sometimes it's immediate and sometimes it's a process where he's working on your heart, changing your heart so that it will align with his. And so, ask God, am I thinking about this all wrong? And he might just change your thoughts and your feelings about it. And then there's going to be other times where you do ask God, you say, what is going on? And you don't get an answer. He never tells you, hey, I was trying to teach you a lesson, or, you were thinking about this wrong. And so you have no idea. But in those times, the lesson may be that he just wants you to trust him. He just wants blind trust from you. He wants you to believe that he has a reason, believe that he has the power to do something, and he's just restraining it. Maybe that's all he wants from you. He just wants you to believe in the power that he's not showing, just blind faith. Maybe he wants you to trust him when he's not showing you anything. And so maybe that's the lesson. But no matter what it is, we know that he has the power. And he may be restraining it for a purpose, but there is a purpose. He has the power to do it if he wants to. And so even if you can't see it, he's working. He knows what's going on. And if he's restraining his power for a moment, then he has a reason. And eventually you're going to see his power, and everybody else's too. And that's just kind of a spoiler alert to the end of this story, is that he let the Philistines win so that to teach the Israelites a lesson. But he couldn't let the Philistines think that they won, and he couldn't let them think their God was more powerful than him. And so when they brought the ark into the temple of their God, then God caused their idol God to fall down in front of the ark as if it was bowing down to him. And the first day they're like, okay, that's weird. The idol fell down. And so they pick it back up. The next day it falls down in front of him, and his head and his arms fall off. And so all that's left is just this God's torso falling down in front of God. And so the people get scared and they move the ark from one town to the next. And every town that they move it to, there becomes a plague. And eventually they send this ark back to the Israelites. They're like, we don't want any part of it. We get it. Your God is more powerful than our God. And so through the whole thing, God eventually showed his power. He showed his power to the Philistines and he showed his power to the Israelites. He just restrained it for a time for a purpose. And so it's the same thing with us. And so anyway, don't doubt God's power. Even if, don't be like the little kid that's like, oh, I think that I'm more powerful, or I think this other thing is more powerful, or God must not have any power. No, he has the power. He's just restraining it. And so that's all that I have for today. If you'd like to read the lesson, actually study this lesson in 1 Samuel 5-7, then you can go to livethroughjesus.substack.com and you can become a paid subscriber. You have to become a paid subscriber if you want to do the studies. If you want to listen to the devotions or get the blog post, then you can become a free subscriber at Live Through Jesus, and you can get this in the form of a blog post sent to you every single week. But if you want to study the lesson, you have to become a paid subscriber, but it's just $6 a month or $60 a year, and then you'll get every single lesson emailed to you each week, and you can study these lessons with me. So if you'd like to study that lesson and hear more about the hilarious story, really, that happens in this lesson, then you can subscribe there. And then if you don't want to subscribe, I teach all of these lessons for free still on YouTube and podcast on my YouTube channel called Live Through Jesus. So you can go there if you just want to listen for free. So that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you back next week. Thanks, and have a good day.